Hello, everybody. I apologize if there's any sound in the background. Something's going on upstairs. Not sure what, but it's being a little bit noisy, but I can't wait any longer. We're here to do the recap of UFC Vegas 115, as well as predictions for UFC 327. Procházka versus Ulberg in a really not great pay-per-view card. It's an interim title, or I guess a vacant title, whatever you want to call it. And then like Moicano Costa is a co-main event. Now, when Van and Taira were going to fight, that was going to be pretty good. And I was also looking forward to, not really anything else that got canceled. So yeah, this card didn't really get any worse. Let's talk about UFC Vegas 115 first. This card was fun. It was action-packed, but it was not a UFC level card. So many of these fighters. If you told me in a year's time that Brenson Hibaro was not in the UFC, I would cheer. If you told me Manolo Zucchini was not in the UFC, I would cheer. If you told me Robert Rajala was not, or Rawala? It's a W sound. It's a W sound. Was not in the UFC come a year, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't cheer that one, but I wouldn't be surprised. Thomas Peterson, Guillermo Pat, Stuart Nickel, Alexander Acosta, Darius Flowers, Lando Venata almost certainly will not be. I assume he's going to retire. Alice Pereira, Haley Cowan, Azamat Pekoyev, Tresean Gore, Dione Barbosa, Melissa Gatto, Dakota Hope, Kai Kamaka III. If you told me all of those guys and gals were not in the UFC in a year's time, I would believe you. The only ones that I think for sure are going to be in the UFC are Jandiroba, Vina Jandiroba, Tabitha Ricci, Abdul Rahman Yakyaev, Hanano Moicano, Ethan Ewing. It would take a really weird one for that one not to happen. Tommy McMillan and Jose Delano. That's it. I'm 50-50 on like Rafael Estev. And that's the problem, is that this card felt like a very good but still regional card. And if you want a regional card, may I suggest you go watch a regional card? It will cost you less money, and you get to support some local fighters. So that's the thing. Like that's the thing is, like, I'm going to use football as an example here. Some of the greatest entertainment games I've ever watched of football are the CFL, Arena Football, Appalachian State versus Michigan State, or Michigan? I forget which. Appalachian State had a big upset against either Michigan State or Michigan that I got to watch live at the game, which was phenomenal. And that is one of the best live experiences of sports I have ever had in terms of entertainment, but the talent is not there. It's weird that the UFC manages to get away with, we are the apex, the pinnacle, the premier, and people will just defend it on the rights of entertaining fights. Like Tommy McMillan, Manolo Zucchini was a fun fight. It was also a fight between a guy who clearly shouldn't be in the UFC and a guy I'm not sure should be in the UFC. Anyways, let's talk about the action real quick, and it will be quick. There's not a lot to talk about here. Hanano Moicano ran over Chris Duncan. I picked Chris Duncan. I was wrong. This was my horribly wrong fight of the night. Like, I had a lot of losses on this card, but there were a lot of losses that I like fundamentally hit the right, how should I put this? The right aspects of. Like, that I had the right reads of how the flow of the fight was going to go. This one was not the case. The stand-up was purely in terms of numbers relatively competitive, but not really. Moicano was landing the better, the cleaner shots. He wasn't missing the way that Duncan was having, but Duncan was getting his kicks checked, was getting them caught. Yeah, this was Moicano's fight. He marched down in the second round, he hurts him, starts chasing him, takes his back, rear naked choke, bang, done, there you go. Moicano, after the fight, continues to be the weirdest fighter in the world. And I've often said this, I expect fighters to be crazy, but my God, does Moicano take it to a new level. And part of me loves it, because it's just so zany and crazy. But at the same time, here's what I got out of this. Hanano Moicano does not follow the law or the Constitution. He doesn't vote because everything is broken and can't be fixed by anyone but Jesus. The only reason he does not kill people is because of Jesus. Threatens to retire if he doesn't get any easy money, and because he has good YouTube money now. And also I would also like to remind you, this was not brought up in this particular one. I also have to bring up, this guy wanted to be a cop. He doesn't obey the law. Doesn't enforce the law. It is so weird, And at the same time, fun to watch him fight. I said this. I look forward to basically every Moicano fight. There are very, very few exceptions to this. I mean, I guess I didn't look forward to the Islam Makhachev fight just because it was supposed to be Makhachev versus Armin Tsarukyan, which was a way more interesting fight. So when it happened, that was obviously a bit of a letdown. But like it's all fun stuff. So it's good to be there. But I just hope no one in their right mind, and even those who are not in their right mind, take his rants after the fights as anything but zaniness. Varna Jandiroba, Tabitha Ricci had a fight. It was there. I scored the first 2 rounds for Jandiroba. I scored the 3rd round for Ricci. I don't have much else to say. I went with Ricci here on an underdog hunch, really, because I thought that if Ricci could get her boxing going and could get her takedown defense going, that there would actually be a pathway to victory here that I never really trust Vina to deny. However, this became more of a grappling fight where the size of Ricci was going to work against her, and the fact that Jandiroba is just a really, really good grappler. And if you're not Mackenzie Dern, chances are, if you're going to go on the ground with her, you're going to lose. I mean, I guess Carla Esparza grappled her back in the day. But, yeah, I'm not surprised. Abdul Rahman Yakyaev had some problems with Brenton Hibero throwing stuff at his head. Like, the defensive reactions of him are really bad and need to be worked on really, really badly. But he does have the overwhelming physical power and everything. Gets a takedown. Hibero starts working on a Kimura. Commentary gets, points for remembering that he finished DR Negotiai with that, and then he just starts getting pounded and eventually just basically gets bully choked. Like, it's a rear naked choke technically, but it was just kind of a give up one. Now, this is a fight I actually have stuff to say things about. Ethan Ewing versus Rafael Estevan. Estevan missed weight for a bantamweight fight as a former flyweight. Goddamn. You are a fat bastard. Spiritually speaking, because I am way fatter than you, but spiritually speaking, Rafael Estevan, get your shit together. Because you're not a bad fighter. You're a boring fighter, but you're not a bad fighter. And he couldn't really get anything going. I don't remember. Did he get a single? Let me hang on a second here. I'm pulling up UFC stats because, well, it is inaccurate. It is the best thing I've got. Yeah, 0 for 8 on takedowns, shut down, outboxed, finished with liver shots eventually, and Ethan Ewing is really, really good. Looking forward to his next fight. Estevan might get cut just because he's had serious weight issues. I want to say this is his 3rd weight miss. Am I wrong? Am I mistaken? Rafael Estevan. Yeah, missed weight against Charles Johnson at 128. Missed weight against Felipe Bunez at 130. And now misses weight here at 136.5. Ironically, this is the least he's missed weight by, but it was probably by far the most problematic. He definitely should stay at 135, and I do wonder if he's going to be effective because he's not really got the skill set. It's weight bullying. And apparently the durability doesn't even translate because, well, no, I can't say that because Ewing's a pretty hard hitter. Tommy McMillan went out there and went a mile a minute and threw a lot of punches, and the technique is bad. But I will fully admit that he will probably overwhelm a number of people. He's really big, he seems tough, and he seems to actually have solid cardio because dude got up there afterwards and did the cringiest Sean O'Malley semi-bit I've ever seen, and I guess we're fine with it. Zucchini, I wasn't picking before I learned that his shoulder was replaced. Yeah, no. Zucchini's just really, really bad. So, the fight doesn't really mean anything. That is kind of the problem with Tommy McMillan as it stands, is that he's not fought anybody worth anything. The fight with David Magoyan on Contender Series is his hardest fight to date, and it was a majority decision. So it kind of gives all kinds of, concerns. I will say his 3rd round in that fight was phenomenal. He just went ham. That's what I mean. I know this kid has cardio. I know this kid's got heart. I know this kid's got toughness. And I know he's pathologically aggressive. I don't know if he has anything else though. Then we get to a fight that I thought was kind of weird, honestly. And I kind of want to look at the UFC stats here just to see, what was I seeing this right? And I guess it's that Rashala maybe won the 1st round, I guess. But I didn't understand commentary thinking that Rashawa had any hope whatsoever in the third round without a finish, because they were talking about how, he could steal this fight and make it a draw because he lost a point for grabbing the cage. But it's like, no, you got worked in rounds 2 and 3. Like you got beat up in rounds 2 and 3. Round 1 is the only round at any point that there was an argument for. Once Delano kind of settled in and got a little less jittery, and I still gave him the first round, by the way. I scored all 3 rounds for Delano. But if you gave the first round to Rashawa, I don't have a problem. But it was a great showing from Delano. His striking is crisp, clean, very technical, good feel for different ranges, counters, moves well. I do still kind of wonder about his takedown defense. Like Rashawa only went for 3 and didn't get any, but there's a willingness to grapple and not necessarily the greatest takedown defense in the world that this division, I think, at some point will punish. But I'm here for it until that happens. Thomas Peterson versus Guillermo Pat. I scored this fight for Guillermo Pat because I thought he landed the better shots in rounds 1 and 2. I have 0 problems with Peterson winning. This was a fight where there was 1 round where anyone did anything, and that was the third, and that was one beat by Peterson. Got him down, knocked him down, hurt him, mounted him, landed shots, probably even a 10-8. Probably should have been a draw on my card, I guess. It was disappointing because Guillermo Pat, I keep saying Guillermo Pat is like kind of interesting. It's just he doesn't have the power and doesn't have the physicality to really make anything work. Speaking of not having the power or physicality to make anything work, Stuart Nickel lost to Alessandro Costa. Not because Costa is a better technician, not because Nickel had a bad game plan, not because of anything outside of the fact that when Nickel hit Costa, they didn't do anything. And when Costa hit Nickel, it did things. And eventually the body gave in and the liver gave in. And despite Nickel saying, it's not hurting me, yeah, it was. And got the job down. Speaking of fights that were won purely on physicality, Darius Flowers slammed Lando Venata when he had a guillotine in the first round and hurt his rib. Popped it out, and then Lando in the second round hits the canvas on a failed takedown attempt, and that was all she wrote. I will say here, Darius Flowers after the fight was like, I don't want to say making excuses for his prior performances because they're valid. His fights previously have been at altitude and short notice. But my dude, if you think that your cardio is fine and it's just you need a full camp and not at altitude to have it show off, you're wrong. Because if I may be blunt here, if I may make a controversial statement maybe, the way you fight is the problem. You fight incredibly inefficiently. You would have to have inhuman Clay Guida, Merab Dvalishvili style cardio for you not to gas. Like the problem isn't that I think he's out of shape or that he has a bad gas tank. It's the way he fights would require a godlike gas tank to keep up for much more than a round and a half. So I'm not convinced anything is fixed. Obviously, having a full training camp will help. Obviously, not fighting at altitude will help. But is anything fixed? No. Lando Venata just looked like an absolute ghost himself, and that was all there is to it. I regret picking Lando. I should have picked Flowers. I also should have picked Alice Pereira because Haley Cowan looked terrible. Not that Pereira looked necessarily great, because the thing is that like Pereira looked good in the sense that she was way better than Cowan. However, even in the second round, she was starting to have problems. She could take it down. Cowan let her up, and then just got absolutely blitzed with a knee. So, does this mean anything for Pereira? I don't know. I will say, as much as the performance doesn't inspire anything for me, I do like the attitude. Not so much the obsession with I'm going to be the youngest or whatever, but the aggression and like literally like some better ideas than when she fought Rendon. Like, she's 20 years old. She's clearly improving somewhat. I would get her the hell out of that gym because she's at Life MMA, which is the same gym that has Ravenna Oliveira and has done nothing with her. It's the coach that I basically joked he hangs out outside a women's like fitness center and just picks up the really strong, athletic looking girls and says, "Come do MMA," and then teaches them nothing. Now, Bahia has something. Like, she's learned some, like, there's some structure to her game, there's some technique to her game, and Oliveira does not have any of that. But they went through the same process of fighting people who have no business being a name, a stepping stone to the UFC without, like, way better fighters coming into play. So there was that. Tresean Gore versus Azamat Bakoyev was a really fun fight. I won a lot of money because I thought Gore being a massive underdog was stupid. I said it in the preview. Bakoyev is a good fighter. Like, there's not really anything wrong with him skill set wise, but he's not an overwhelming athlete and he's not durable. And sure enough, Gore would clip him periodically, even though I scored the first 2 rounds for Bakoyev, and the judges did not agree. And I don't think that's a robbery. I think they're good rounds. They're close rounds. But like, you're gonna go in there and tangle with Gore, and he's eventually gonna start hurting you. Now, mind you, Bakoyev actually hurt him the worst, knocked him down in the second round. Which, by the way, how did he not get the second? Apparently, some judge did not give him the second round. But the durability was the issue again because Bakoyev hurt his leg either in the second round or the third round. The third round was when it became very, very obvious that the leg was compromised. Goes for like the worst takedown you've ever seen a Russian dude throw. Gets out chain wrestled by Gore. Gore ends up on top, snags a guillotine, and he chokes Bakoyev right out. So Gore's got a good guillotine, and he's got good physicality. He's still, I don't know, is he young enough? I guess this is middleweight, though. 31 is not that old, but I don't know. Has he fixed anything? Maybe. No, I think I have to say he fixing things. His stand-up looked a little bit better here. There were moments where he was winning the fight and was winning the fight without Bakoyev getting, without it being Bakoyev's durability letting him down. So it was a better performance from Gore than his previous ones and even his win over Josh Fremd. I don't know. I just can't help but think that, like, if this guy had a more, dare I say, traditional path to the UFC, he would just be much better instead of being a guy who started MMA back in 2013, didn't do a lot of it, one fight in 13, was very busy in 2014, 4 amateur fights, and then nothing in 15, one fight in 16, nothing in 17, comes back in 2018, gets on the contender, nothing in 19, gets on the Ultimate Fighter in 2021, does surprisingly well because a guy like him who's kind of really adaptable and kind of raw and like can be kind of coached is probably going to do pretty well. And since he's gotten to the UFC, lost to Cody Brundrich, beat Josh Fremd, beat Antonio Tricoli, and now Azamat Bakoyev, he's lost to Marco Tulio and Rodolfo Vieira in pretty bad form. I don't know. It's kind of weird because, like, I said it. It really feels like this guy getting cut and being able to just go do regional stuff would be way better. Like, it feels like a guy who should be on a developmental contract. It is what it is, I guess. Dione Barbosa beat Melissa Gatto, but probably shouldn't have because she probably should have been disqualified for a soccer kick in round number 2. I did score the fight for Barbosa. I have no problem with the decision. This is just a case where, like, this fight shouldn't have continued. And there are people pulling up, angles where the kick is legal and stuff. The problem is that at the end of the day, this was labeled as a foul. And if it is going to be labeled as a foul, then there should be a no contest or a DQ loss. And then if Barbosa wants to argue that it was a legal strike, we go through that process. There's no reason Gatto should have continued in this fight. Gatto gets props for toughness, but everyone else failed to do their job. The doctor failed to do their job. The officials failed to do their job. The commission failed to do their job. At the end of the day, Gatto's decisions to go for takedowns allow Barbosa to get on top a little bit too often and generally win. The stand-up was not really even a thing. Like in rounds 2 and in round 3, there were single-digit significant strikes on both sides. So it essentially just came down to Barbosa being the better grappler of the two. So Barbosa gets the win. She's, I guess, the one with more of a future? No, not really. She's 33 years old. I don't know. I still don't think she's all that great against fighters she can't just, manhandle. And the problem is there's a lot of women at 125 she can just do that to. There's a lot of women she can beat. It's just, it's not going anywhere high up. Dakota Hope versus Kai Kamaka III was a fantastic fight. High volume, high pace, high aggression. I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. It comes down to how you scored round number 2. Kamaka landed more shots. I thought Hope landed the better shots. Round 1, definitely Hope. Round 2, definitely Kamaka. Not much to talk about there. Kamaka is the cleaner striker, which you would imagine, being that he is the much older fighter. Dakota Hope scored a knockdown in the first round, has obvious power, and just looks like an absolute tank. It's amazing that he had the cardio. Like, he threw 312 strikes here, and like, he gassed by the end, but he was still throwing. He threw 100 strikes in the third round while gassed out. That's insane. Yeah, a lot of work needs to be done for him, but he could be something pretty good. How old is he again? Right, he's 29. This is the problem. If he was like 24, like 5 years younger, man, there would be some time to do some stuff there. But he's with the Joshua Van camp, the Michael Aswell camp, Alden Correa. I think it's Daniel Pineda is the head coach there. They seem to be doing good things, so maybe they will legitimately put something together. But like I said, like the problem with this card is that you had 26 fighters on it, and like I said, there are 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll say Pereira as well. So there are 8 people that probably will feel like they actually have a UFC slot come a year, and anybody else on this card who's still around, it's either because they've really turned something around, or because the UFC doesn't get rid of people and just at this point is willing to put on the lowest quality content that they can do, slap a label on it, and put it on Paramount. There you go. Anyways, let's talk about UFC 327. So let's kick off with the usual anti-betting skew here. Spiel is the word, not skew. Skew is on the brain. Anyways, I will be talking about fight betting. I'll be talking about betting odds. I'll be talking about information you can use for betting. I'll be talking about my own betting. However, MMA is not a sport to be putting a lot of money down on. It is chaotic. It is fundamentally fairly unpredictable. Like, there are many examples of fights that have changed on a single punch or a single moment or a single even injury. Fighters fights injured all the time. We had the whole betting scandal with James Krause and company. So before you go laying down your entire paycheck on fights, take a moment to think about that. Realize you probably shouldn't, and continue on. Anyways, so this fight card is probably one that I think I'm going to cover fairly quickly. Not because the fights are necessarily bad. Again, I do object to the idea that this is like a proper UFC pay-per-view caliber card based on what I have become accustomed to in the past. In a nutshell, I've been a fan for too long, and the current product will not really live up to that. But they're fun enough fights. They're well-matched enough fights. I actually really don't think there's a matchup on this card. Okay, there's one. I would have loved for Cub Swanson to just stay retired. I would have loved that. I would have been a big fan of that particular aspect. But otherwise, it's relatively well-matched stuff. There's interesting things. It's just there's only like 1 or 2 variables in each fight that is like really going to determine the fight, in my opinion, which means that the analytics of the fight are relatively limited. So, speaking about analytically limited fights, UFC vacant light heavyweight title, Yuri Procházka, Carlos Ulberg, essentially an interim title fight. Alex Pereira going up to heavyweight, got stripped, and Pereira has obviously beaten Procházka twice. And I don't think anyone's exactly thinking that Carlos Ulberg is the guy who would have beaten him generally, because I think that that's a stylistic matchup that Pereira takes 9 out of 10 times. It's 205, so there's always a possibility. Pereira's defense is not necessarily rock solid, so could Ulberg beat him? Yes, but I would be handily picking Pereira. And yeah, let's just kick this pick. Anyways, you've got Procházka, 6'3", 80-inch reach, 6'4", 77-inch reach in Ulberg's case. Ulberg has the fundamental style to potentially do some damage to Procházka at various points. And if he finished him, I would not be surprised. He has the style that actually punishes people for kind of getting wild and getting crazy. and he has knockout power. Now, it's not exceptional knockout power. He went the distance with Volkan Oezdemir and Jan Blachowicz, who are about the only defensively solid fighters he has ever faced. His knockouts are Dominic Reyes. We're going to talk about him later, but I think enough said. Alonzo Metafield. That one was kind of impressive just because of how quickly he melted him. 12 seconds for a knockout. That's pretty good. Dawoon Jung, super defensively liable. Ior Porteria has lots of problems. Nick Negumereanu is like Mr. I'm going to tank shit with my chin. By the way, what is the deal with Nikolai Negumereanu? I really need to at some point find out, because he hasn't fought since that Ulberg fight in 2022. And like his UFC record was standing at 4-2, including wins over Porteria, Kennedy and Zekachu, and Alexa Kammer, who I know didn't really work out, but I thought was going to be a pretty good fighter. There's a story there. Why is he gone? Anyways, but Yuri Procházka is a guy that, as much as I'm never confident, never comfortable, never thinking it's an ironclad pick, because honestly, even going back to his regional scene, I'm talking Gladiator Championship, I'm talking Fight Nights Global, there were fights in which he still largely won, but got hurt, got hit, got damaged, because he is that defensively open, and he's trying to learn head movement, he's trying to learn defense, he's trying to be a more capital T technical fighter. And realistically, I think the problem is that it's just keeping him from being a little bit as deadly as possible, and then eventually he just goes kind of ham. Because I look at the Khalil Roundtree fight, which is coming off of rounds 1 and rounds 2, Roundtree was winning. I thought Roundtree was doing a really good job, and then it was when Yuri became classic Yuri in the 3rd round that things started going his way. And even the Jamal Hill fight to a certain degree was the same, although he did have a knockdown in the 1st round. But the 2nd round of that fight was like Yuri trying to be this sort of new version of Yuri, this post-Alex Pereira version of Yuri, and it really doesn't actually work all that well. Maybe he's made breakthroughs there, maybe not. But I trust his athleticism, I trust his physical potency, I trust his aggression, I trust his craziness to see him through, I trust the creativity that creativeness gets done, and I trust the aggression that eventually craziness brings out of him. Again, I've said this before, and I'll say it probably every time he fights, Yuri Procházka without the craziness just isn't a fighter. He probably is just like playing soccer or something, because he is that kind of special athlete at 205, and we don't see that much. There are just not many people who match that. And thus, there is very little way to prepare for him, because how do you prepare for an athletic wild man? Now, again, Ulberg could win. Ulberg hits hard. Yuri has a good chin, but God knows he does get hit clean sometimes. And it's very reliant on the fact that he does have a natural ability to see shots coming and absorb them. But against any top 205er, the knockout chance is going to be there. That is the nature of the division. As a result, it is not a strong pick. It is not a confident pick. It is not an ironclad pick. But I am going to go with Yuri Procházka by TKO, because like, how else does Yuri Procházka actually win? Like, the dude doesn't go to decision really ever, actually, out of curiosity. How many decisions does he have? He defeated Mark Tanios in Ryzen back in 2016, and that appears to literally be it. There's a couple of like regional fights here that have like win without a method. Maybe they went the distance, I don't know. But yeah. I doubt it. He either finishes or gets finished. Even his losses aren't by decision. They're knocked out by King Mo, knocked out by Bahia twice, and knocked out or submitted by Abdul Karim Edilov. And I believe it doesn't on Tapology. It doesn't have a result for the Bojan Velichkovic fight, but knowing what I know about Bojan and his fighting style, probably knockout. Anyways, so I'm going with Yuri, but like Ulberg is obviously a live dog here. Or, well, it's actually basically an even money fight. Minus 104 to minus 122 for Yuri, plus 100 to minus 110 on Ulberg. You could go either way on this one. This is a live fight. This is a fight where I suspect Yuri will come out in the more reserved version of himself to start with. And that Ulberg being a relatively quickly acclimatized fighter will probably have that success early, similar to how Roundtree did. And at some point, the Wild Man will come out and there will be knockout. One way or the other. Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa is one of the oddest fighters in the world because on one hand, you have a guy who has all the physical tools that you could realistically want in a UFC fighter at middleweight or at 205. He has a decent technical background as well. It's not like he's just like a dumb brute fighter. However, and it's not like, and outside of the Israel Adesanya fight, which is very, very sad, his losses to Robert Whittaker, Sean Strickland, and Marvin Vettori are all competitive fights. All ones that he worked at a pretty high rate too. 158 significant strikes landed against Strickland and 163 against Marvin Vettori. But at the same time, there are phases in those fights, and even in the Luke Rockhold fight, and even to a certain degree in the Kopylov fight, where there are just moments where, like, Costa doesn't seem to really want to do the things anymore. There are, like, it's not a round. I couldn't point to you to a round, but there are just, like, phases in fights where he just kind of doesn't look like he really wants to be there, and MMA has a way of punishing that. And to a degree, that's what lost in the fights with Whittaker and Strickland, and certainly Vettori. And also the last time he went up to 205 was that Vettori fight, which was just horrible weight management on his part. So it's not the size, because for one thing, Murzakanov easily could be a 185er. He's under 6 feet tall fighting at 205. He's not going to have any kind of notable size advantage. He's probably smaller than Vettori, actually, now that I think about it. I question the mentality whenever Costa's talking about this kind of thing. It's just all mental. If Costa is turned on, he is focused, he is wanting to fight, he is here to go for 3 rounds, he'll probably beat Murzakanov by decision, because Murzakanov is not a round-to-round decision winner like at all. He's a relatively low-paced guy who is fairly relying on knockouts. Even in his last fight against Alexander Rakic, 3 SIG strikes, 1 per minute, is, what he did. Even the Brunson Hibero fight, a guy who is wide open to just getting smoked. 27 strikes landed in 3 minutes, so about 9 per minute. These are not high rate performances. These are not round winning performances. And there's a reason he has 1 decision win in his UFC run, that being over Dustin Jacoby, a guy who he was able to hurt and Jacoby could not hurt him back. Well, Jacoby did break his arm, if I recall correctly, Murzakonov's forearm, I want to say, which forced him out for about more than a year, 16 months. Aside from that, like it's all knockouts. And I'm going to pick him to knock out Costa here, just because it feels more reliable. Murzakanov doesn't have an ideal skill set. It's very oddly suited to a guy who's fighting people who are almost universally taller and longer than him. He's 5'10" with a 71.5-inch reach. He will hang around at kicking range and on the outside. That seems just very, very weird, but it does work. He has the power, the explosiveness, the speed, and the just kind of knack to land hard shots. And like I said, if I trusted Costa a little bit more, I would probably pick Costa here, but I can't bring myself to do it. I'm tempted to, because his style makes more theoretical sense. He has more of the traditional physical attributes you're looking for, and more of the round-winning meta aspects to his game than Murzakanov does. But Murzakanov likes to fight. There's never a moment in the fight where I'm wondering if his heart is in it. And Costa, there just is. So, Murzakanov by TKO. He is minus 195 to minus 210. Plus 163 to plus 173 on Costa. By the way, there's a lot of prop value on this one, because for some reason, the most likely outcome is decision for Murzakanov. And I would never touch that. I have zero interest in betting on Murzakanov by decision. So I'll probably try and find a prop bet on this one, actually, more than just a straight up Murzakanov bet, because I would not trust this guy to ever win a decision. Realistically, it's just not on the table. I'm not saying it's impossible. He beat Dustin Jacoby by decision, but there's so much in his game that doesn't really win rounds or even win exchanges without big moments. And when he gets the big moments, like the problem is when he gets the big moments, it's a finish. Josh Hockett versus Curtis Blades heavyweight action. I am taking Hockett by TKO. This is a sadness hedge pick because regardless of how he wins or even how he looks, I'm not going to be happy if Hockett wins. And I am going to be happy if Blades wins because Hockett is just so corny. He's Colby Covington, only instead of doing like a Hulk Hogan impression, which essentially was what Covington was doing, with a little bit of Ric Flair mixed in, it's a Randy Savage impression. And it doesn't make any sense. And it's not that I disagree with his politics. I do. I made that clear. But his promos don't make sense. I always pointed out the one on Contender Series where he talked about, you gotta bring me all the sex traffickers and the rapists and all of that. Bring me the child molesters to fight. And it's like, my dude, you are asking for the worst people in the world to get paid to fight you. What are we doing? What is the point of this? This is dumb. Anyways, that's my core problem with him. I guess if I have to talk about this fight, I mean, it's not just a sadness hedge. Like, I think there's a legit chance that Hockett does beat Blades. He is a fantastic athlete. He is a mess technically in basically every regard except for wrestling. And it still works because, again, for a heavyweight, he is really fast, really explosive, really powerful. And Curtis Blades has not looked like really comfortable in a fight for some time. Like, he's been able to win fights, and in fact, a win over Kuniev, which is aging pretty well, and beating Jailton Almeida. But other than that, it's like the last time he really went out there and like dominated and made things happen was like Chris Daukaus in 2022. So it's not like Sergey Pavlovich's striking makes a lot of sense. It's just powerful. It's not like Tom Aspinall's striking even necessarily makes a lot of sense. It makes more than Hockett's does. But it's powerful, it's fast, and I don't trust Blades to eat hard shots. I don't think I ever really did, but I particularly don't now. And his wrestling and his striking over time have become more and more divorced from each other, where they're actually trying to go with a fight and how they play off of each other. So I'm hoping for a Blades win. I'm hoping to be wrong. I'm sadness hedging on Hockett, but there's a legitimate chance that Hockett actually will just win because Blades is problematic in terms of how he's put together at this point. Blades is the favorite, minus 122 to minus 138, plus 105 to plus 117. I get that. Hockett is a guy who I don't think would have particularly great cardio, just looking at the efficiency of his style and stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a case where he defies expectations. But like, he did just beat Denzel Freeman, who is not a bad wrestler. And he kind of out-wrestled him too. So, yeah. I mean, Denzel Freeman's a way, way, way worse striker than Blades. But that fight was still very ugly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to really do with this fight. It's a massive step up for Hockett. So it's like, how does the physical bully attributes of him really translate to this level? And the answer is, I don't really know. Johnny Walker, Dominic Reyes. This is a battle between two broken fighters. I'm going with Reyes for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just thought Reyes at his peak before he was broken was a much better fighter than Walker. Like, Walker, even when he was effective and winning and doing his thing, was like troublingly bad technically and a mess and also very physically fragile. So I never really want to trust him. And if you look at his wins, they're all guys he has massive physical advantages over. Paul Craig, Anthony Smith, Misha Serkinov, Justin Ledet, a very young, well, not young, but like very early on in his career, Khalil Roundtree. And there are some more athletic guys there. Ryan Spahn, but it's a Ryan Spahn who's not really trying. Ion Kudalaba, who we've been through the Ion Kudalaba thing. He falls apart when things don't instantly cave. It's been a bit better lately, but like when he lost to Johnny Walker, that was absolutely his thing. And I don't trust him to beat Reyes. Now, can he knock Reyes out? Yeah, sure, that's on the table. Dominic Reyes is a broken fighter. He's from the land of broken choice since the John Jones fight. Essentially, a fight that he, in my opinion, won, and in a lot of people's opinion, won, and ended up losing and not becoming champion, then got knocked out by Jan Blachowicz, got knocked out by Yuri Procházka, got knocked out by Ryan Spahn, got knocked out by Carlos Ulberg. In the meantime, knocked out Dustin Jacoby and Anthony Smith and Nikita Krylov. Yeah, I don't think there's a good way to pick this fight. I don't really. They're both broken. It's just I have faith that Glover Teixeira, which Reyes is training with now, can instill something resembling confidence and structure back to Reyes' game. And while Johnny Walker, if I'm not mistaken, is training Extreme Couture now, I just think there's too little functionality to work with there. He has all the physical talent, but his last fight was really about his opponent just self-destructing, because he was losing significantly to Zhang Mingyang, and then Mingyang blew apart. So I'm going to go with Reyes, but like 50-50, flip a coin, do what you want. I would not bet on Reyes. Reyes is the favorite here, minus 122 to minus 138. Pardon me, that's Blades. Minus 127 to minus 150. Close. Plus 110 to plus 125 for Walker. It's going to end in a knockout, and frankly, that's just probably where my bet is going to go, because I cannot see these two making it 3 rounds with each other at all. Cub Swanson, Nate Landwehr. This fight just comes down to how much of Cub is there. This is his retirement fight. His last fight was also, I think, supposed to be his retirement fight, so go figure. He's going out there against Nate Landwehr. Prime Cub, or even functional Cub, beats Nate Landwehr. He outboxes him. He's a better grappler. He's a better everything, frankly. The question is a 42-year-old Cub Swanson who's been on the shelf still better? I'm going to go with Cub. I'm going to go with Cub by decision. But it really just comes down to how much you think Cub has in the gas tank. That's all. There is every chance in the world that Landwehr absolutely steamrolls him, because Cub is just not really a UFC fighter, in the sense that he's a retired guy who's now more or less just a coach at Bloodline. And, you know, I imagine still staying in great shape and everything, but how much do you like betting on that? I don't know. Your mileage may may vary. Oh my lord. That sentence. Cub Swanson decision. He's a plus 100 to minus 126 guy, so he's a favorite and an underdog, depending on the line you pick. And minus 110 to minus 144 or 114 on Nate Landwehr. Patricia Pitbull versus Aaron Pico. I do not trust Aaron Pico not to get knocked out. That is the pick. I wish I could make it more interesting. Aaron Pico is, when he came into MMA, I was like very, very excited, very, very here for it. The mix of wrestling and boxing background and a mentality that is very aggressive and down to scrap is something I want to see work out. But his ability to survive against guys who can hit hard it's bad. It's just bad. So, could he beat Pitbull? Yeah, sure. Anyway, at this point, Pitbull is not a solid pick. He's 38 years old. This is featherweight. That is old for any weight class, and particularly for featherweight. He is not at his prime. He is not fighting his best. But I still think at some point he'll land a good counter shot and put Pico down. Now, if this goes to decision, Pico's winning. If Pico can get his game going, Pico's winning. But I don't trust it. So, Pitbull, TKO, Bellator never die. We move on. Pitbull's the underdog, plus 198 to plus 275. Should be. Minus 104 or minus 251 to minus 350 on Pico. I have a new way of writing down the odds, and I keep looking at the wrong fight. My apologies. Kevin Holland versus Randy Brown. Why do I feel like this is a rematch? I should have looked this up before. I'm trying to remember if this is a rematch or if this is just a fight that I've been calling for at various points, because they're both freakishly tall, athletic dudes at this weight class, and I think they'll just be a fun matchup with each other. No, it doesn't look like Randy Brown and Kevin Holland have fought, so I think it's the latter. I think it's just this is a fight I've been calling for so long that I'm there, essentially. I don't trust Randy Brown in this fight, really. I've always thought that this is a fight that Holland could win, because the things that Holland loses on are not really what Randy Brown does. Holland's issues, of course, have been historically being very bad at wrestling, and also being somewhat bad when he doesn't have better boxing than his opponent. Like, it's always kind of a problem when he can't easily outbox someone, that he starts making like very bad decisions. Sometimes that is wrestling when you shouldn't be wrestling. Sometimes that is getting very desperate with his strikes. And maybe Randy Brown can make that happen, because Randy Brown's a good boxer. But I am going to go with Holland here. Even though Holland's on a 2-fight losing streak, his fights with Daniel Rodriguez and Mike Malott were still pretty good. I don't think his wins over Luque and Nelson mean much. I don't think his losses to Ritter and Dolidze mean all that much. Not when it comes to this matchup anyways. But Randy Brown has been... I don't know, he's not been great lately. There's been a better record than Kevin Holland lately. He is 4-2 in his last 6, so what are you gonna do? But he lost to Brian Battle in a fight that was largely, damn it, I'm not longer than this guy, and I'm having problems, and I'm clinching with him when I shouldn't, and I'm making bad decisions, and it's a fight that I thought Randy Brown won, but it was like, this is bad fight IQ against a worse fighter than Kevin Holland. Got knocked out by Gabriel Bonfim. Fight with Nicholas Dalby is a win, I guess, but Dalby's an old man. And then the Zaleski fight, the Lizer Zaleski fight is aging very badly, because Zaleski's last couple of fights have not been good. And then, of course, old man Muslim Salikov. Like, there's just not really much to believe here. Would I be surprised if he was able to outbox Kevin Holland? No. This is fundamentally a battle between two guys I don't trust, without a guy who can necessarily capitalize on what Holland does badly. So, Holland by decision. If you're picking Randy Brown, I ain't going to hate on it, because your mileage may vary how much you want to trust Kevin Holland. Holland is a slight underdog. This is basically a pick'em fight. Minus 100 to minus 112 on Holland. Minus 104 to minus 121 on Brown. Makes sense. Nothing really to complain about there. Mateusz Gamrot versus Esteban Ribovic. I am just going to go with Gamrot. There's not really anything complex there. Gamrot will probably take him down. Probably out wrestle him. Probably out chain wrestle him. Probably out grapple him. That's that. So, Gamrot by decision. I have Gamrot as the underdog here. That cannot be right. Checking out best fight odds here really quickly, because that line does not make a lot of sense. Gamrot. Yeah, I've got these backwards. I've got these backwards here in my notes. Gamrot is the favorite, minus 186 to minus 209. And Ribovic is the underdog, plus 150 to plus 178. That is honestly closer together than I think practical. So a rare chance when I get to bet on somebody at like minus 186 and feel good about it. Tatiana Suarez versus Lupita Godinez. So I'm just going to go with the assumption that Suarez is still Suarez, in the sense that the fight with Amanda Lemos, which got very, very dull, very boring, and of course the loss to Weili Zhang, are really not indicative of what she does against everybody else. She is the bigger fighter, 5'5", 66-inch reach, 5'2", 61-inch reach on Lupita. Lupita's got the better gas tank, probably, at this point anyways. But Suarez is the more decorated wrestler. She is probably the better wrestler. She is probably the better athlete, and I'm going to pick her to win a decision over Lupita Godinez. She's the favorite, minus 150 to minus 162, plus 120 to plus 144 on Godinez. However, if Godinez can fend off the first couple of takedowns, this is a live dog, because there's something, there are bad vibes off of Suarez, and that's all there is to it. Markel Medeiros versus Chris Padilla. An interesting enough fight, but Markel Medeiros to me is a guy who really could put something very, very good together. He has all the physical tools. He's cool under fire. He doesn't have any of the mental problems I see, but like every fight he's had has been like him fighting somebody that I feel like he probably has way more potential than. Mark Choinsky, Austin Hubbard, Landon Quinones, all fighters with way lower ceilings than him. And still having, like, maybe not the Choinsky fight, but, like, every other fight being a relatively competitive affair. And that's just because I don't think Choinsky is UFC material. He's not a good enough athlete, nor is he a good enough technician outside of his wrestling. And that was kind of all that was. But like close fight with Hubbard, a fight with Landon Quinones that a lot of people had him losing. I don't agree either one of them lost or won, honestly. What I saw with that fight was I gave Quinones the first round. He started hot. I gave Medeiros the third round because I think he had figured out Quinones by the end of the second. And the second round is really, really close in a pick'em. And whatever you went with that is how you went with the fight. So Chris Padilla, on the other hand, is someone who is reckless at times, awkward at all times, has a really good wrestling background that he doesn't honestly actually use, in a striking game that is divorced from it. Kind of Curtis Blades, but at 155. A little bit, just a little bit. And I'm going to go with Padilla here just because Padilla has that chaotic factor, that creative factor, that it will lose him fights, but it will also win him fights. Medeiros is just a little bit too predictable, a little bit too just like very generic UFC MMA fighter in a nutshell. Like everything he does, I feel like I can predict it, and it's not because it's based in good fundamentals. It's just that he doesn't really have ideas to like branch off and like go places with during the fight, and that's what has allowed guys who, again, I think on a physical level, I think on a potential level, I think on a ceiling level, he should have just blown out. So if he wins, great. But I am going to go with Padilla. The weird thing is here, Padilla is a favorite by decision. I'm going to go with TKO because Padilla does not win decisions terribly often. He did beat Jai Herbert in one, but he's a bit of a finisher because he doesn't need much of an excuse to just go kind of ham. Kelvin Gastelum, Vicente Luque, Gastelum by decision. Don't really care. Don't really need either of these guys fighting. Gastelum is a minus 250 to minus 280 favorite. Plus 200 to plus 230 on Luque. They've got stoppage as the most likely form here, TKO. But it's been a long time since Gastelum actually finished anybody. And while I question Luque's durability, he didn't get finished by Joel Alvarez, who's like an actual finisher. And Gastelum has not finished anyone since last time Gastelum finished somebody. It was Michael Bisping in 2017. So I'm probably never going to pick Gastelum to finish somebody in a nutshell. I didn't do the Medeiros versus Padilla betting odds. Padilla is the favorite minus 155 to minus 176, plus 130 to plus 144 on Medeiros. I do believe I did Gastelum and Luque minus 250 to minus 280 on Gastelum, plus 200 to plus 230 on Luque. And Charles Radke versus Francisco Prado. I'll be cheering for Prado because Radke is, it's a political thing. If you want to put it that way. It's more of a social thing. Like, I just think Radke is a gobshite in a nutshell. Also, he really lost me with that Daniel Frunza fight where he just went full on like, I'm gonna wrestle you constantly. It's like, dude, Reese McKee just tuned this guy up on the feet. Do your thing. Go throw hooks. God damn. There's not much to Radke beyond like good counter wrestling and chain wrestling and a big hook. Unfortunately, I just don't have any faith in Prado. He's lost to Nikolai Veretennikov, who is about as bad. He's lost to Daniel Zellhuber, Jake Matthews, Jamie Malarkey. His only win is over Atman Azaitar, who is very bad. Prado has potential in the sense that he is kind of Latin American Drew Dober a little bit. But the problem for Prado is like, yes, you have the physical skills, but you have a very limited reach, and you also tend to just get sucked into wrestling exchanges that you don't actually have a way of winning. It's just, I don't know. I don't trust Prado's process. I don't trust where he's going. He's at American Top Team. Maybe they can mold him into something. Maybe this is going to be the turnaround thing. He is young. Kid is, 23, 24 years old? So there's still time to learn. There's still time to capitalize. And whereas Radke is like a 35-year-old foreign fighter who's just not very good. But yeah, I don't trust it. So, and there's a sadness hedge to that as well. Because if Prado wins, let's go. I'm going to be partying. I'm going to be like, yeah, I don't have to see Charles Radke do a post-fight thing. Let's go. Yeah, I can't pick Prado until I start seeing him actually beat real fighters. And as little faith as I have, and as much trash as I talked on Radke, he is a real fighter. He is A tough guy, mentally and physically, honestly. So I'm pretty sure the only person that's finished him is like Carlos Prates, which is I'm not. Oh, and Mike Malott. Mike Malott and Carlos Prates. Oh, and he had one finish. He was finished once before he got to the UFC. And it was, but yeah, Justin Montalvo, not a bad fighter. So yeah, he'll probably get this one done if we're being just completely honest here. There's nothing that Prado does that makes Radke game fall apart. Like Radke's issue is that if he gets somebody who's just going to kind of stay at range with him and kind of exploit the fact that he doesn't honestly have a lot of range tools, he'd have a problem. But Prado lacks the reach. He lacks that kind of game. He tends to crash the pocket. He tends to crash the clinch. He tends to bring the exact same fight that like Radke actually wants to the table. Got to go with Radke. Prado is the underdog, plus 135 to plus 163, minus 167 to minus 191 on Radke. What did this card lose again? There's been a lot of fights lost here. Andre Lima versus Dong Hu Choi. This is supposed to be Luque versus Daukus. And then Gastelum replaced him. Van versus Taira, of course. Dariush versus Manuel Torres. There are better things I would do with both of those guys. Actually, I guess I'm a little fine with that fight falling apart. And we were supposed to have Nazim Sadikov versus Medeiros. Man, Sadikov would have beaten up Medeiros, I think. Instead, he's got a kind of winnable fight against Chris Padilla. But like Chris Padilla is also a guy I would not be taking short-nosed fights against. Anyways, that's the card. Hope you enjoyed. I am looking forward to some of these fights, and even though I did crap on this, it's not really a UFC level pay-per-view or premium live event or numbered event, whatever we're going to be using as terminology now that it's not really pay-per-view. It can be fun. It's just I'm a little tired of the standard for UFC being can be fun. Anyways, check out the link tree in the description for more stuff with me, social media, video gaming stuff, and the MMA Simulator Discord. Have a good one. I'm out. Tax season. Let's go.